So, a little while ago, I made an FF14 video about my experiences from level 1 through 20. This episode was originally going to be my experience from 20 to 40, but holy shit, this game is incredibly dense with quests. I also quickly realized that I was writing what was a badly abridged version of the game's story, so instead of doing that, this video is just going to be my thoughts on the game so far and what I enjoyed versus what I didn't. Fair warning though. Anyways, with that out of the way, I wanted to talk first about the story. I hear a lot of people saying it's a slog to go through, but I thought of it as more of a slow burn, actually. There was enough going on in the story that kept me interested, and the mini-stories throughout were actually some pretty good character introductions. I do have two issues so far with the story. The first is the Company of Heroes arc, mostly because I think the reasoning behind proving myself as a selfless hero is kind of flawed. Like, I took a giant turtle's egg out of its nest and then killed the turtle, and then lured out a guy wanting revenge on his brother's killer, then fucking murked him too. But they tell me these heinous actions that I did are worth it because I didn't ask for anything in return for doing their work. I think that just makes me a trigger-happy psycho that needs an excuse over anything. Second, and this is more of a blanket issue with Final Fantasy as a series, but when I come across a dead character, why can't I just raise them? Like, Square, all the healers have a res. You know we can play healers. Fucking look at me clicking the button. Look at me fucking clicking the button. I'm clicking the button. I'm clicking the fucking button. Other than that, though, I actually really enjoyed my time in A Realm Reborn. And now I'm working on post A Realm Reborn things, and it's actually starting to get more interesting, and things are starting to ramp up. I think people see A Realm Reborn as its own game. And that's why I think it's boring, because you've got, like, 5 minutes of the Garlean storyline, then, like, fucking 2 hours of nonsense between two characters. And you know, it's perfectly fine to think that way, but I think the reason why me personally I was able to stay with the story for so long was because I know there's 3 expansions ahead that are part of the same general storyline, so I kind of treated it like a very stretched out version of those 2-hour tutorial levels in some JRPGs, like Kingdom Hearts 2's Roxas sequence. But still, that just makes it basically a 50-hour intro, and it's understandable if people don't want to skip through it. The dungeons were also something that I enjoyed too. There was something new, or like a different mechanic every dungeon. It was a blast to go through them. I don't really have a favorite, but I think one that I actually really enjoyed a lot was Brayflox Longstop Hard. I enjoyed that one because the final boss had the Final Fantasy X battle theme, and I was like, holy shit, this is actually kind of a banger for this utterly ridiculous boss fight. But my least favorite is definitely the 1000 Maws of Totoroc, and if you want to know why, here's exhibits A through Z. The combat, in my opinion, is also really well put together. If you've heard anyone talk about starting 14, you've heard this before. The 2.5 second global cooldown sucks so much at first because you have so few abilities, but as you level more, you unlock more things that you weave between those cooldown. So, come raiding time, you're performing a lot of actions at once, and, well, that's very true for some classes. I'm not gonna lie, there are some classes that don't have a crazy amount of inputs at level 50, like White Mage, but that really isn't a big issue because they're focusing more on their teammates instead of their DPS rotation. In my opinion, the ability effects on their own are so nice to watch, but seeing on average 3 other people's equally flashy abilities at once can be a bit much. Thankfully, you could tone down the effect intensity, so that's all good. Speaking of intensity though, this game's difficulty spikes up crazy fast. I don't think the game's very difficult until you get into raiding, which is fine in and of itself, but the insane gap between being able to mash to win to needing to focus on every cast bar, timing interrupts, and actually having to do your rotation, yeah, I think that's a bit much. One aspect of difficulty that really took me by surprise, honestly, were the interrupts, because I don't think I recall a single time before these raids where interrupting an enemy cast with your class ability was a key mechanic to the fight. Actually, I don't think there was a single enemy that you were able to interrupt in dungeons beforehand, which is why I was so baffled with the concept of interrupts. Until then, I thought my paladin and bard just had fucking useless abilities. You know, hopefully dungeons in the future form a better bridge into the raids and trials. And while I'm still talking about it, actually, I really like the raids and trials that I've been in so far. They're a challenging experience if you're looking for it, as you could go into them above the intended level and just steamroll them if you want, but there's also an option to limit yourself to the minimum item level and do raids that way. It's a significant challenge in my opinion, and it's my personal preference for raiding anything besides the 24-man alliance raids. Overall, I enjoyed A Realm Reborn. There were definitely some very slow and kind of irritating moments, but it was very enjoyable overall. The combat was also something that I really liked, even though it had a really slow and admittedly rough start. Everything did eventually even out. Thank you all for watching. Tune in next time when I talk about my raiding experience, and until then, stay safe.